folks. Welcome today to today's live stream titled 15 Steps for Spring Cleaning Your Law Firm's Website. It's great to see that so many people have joined today, and hello to the folks watching the recording. I'm Ray Ritter from Lisi, and I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Kristen Brophy, the Director of Client Strategy at Lisi. Kristen, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at Lisi?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everybody. I am Kristen Brophy, the newest member of the Lisi team. This is only my 5th week, so I'm very excited to be presenting on this topic. Prior to joining Lisi, I was a solo marketer, the Director of Marketing and Business Development at a small litigation firm based in Boston, Massachusetts. And prior to that, I was in various marketing technology and digital marketing roles at some larger firms. And this is a really hot topic for me and spring cleaning websites because my previous firm, Kavanagh, actually just launched a brand new website in October of 2020. And we were still doing some hygiene cleanup routinely. So this is a very timely topic for me and my previous firm, especially. And I hope that it is going to have some good items for everybody else to come away with too.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that. So before I was at Lisi, I was the senior manager of digital marketing at a large national firm. And while I was there, I coordinated a large-scale rebrand and website redesign and redevelopment and launch of that website. And we learned quickly that it was critical to routinely review the content of the website for the content and also the functionality. And then for the past 6 years, I've been at Lisi as the Director of Client Service. And I've basically done a lot of the same things, but on the other side of the table. And here I help clients with strategic planning and converting their website goals and ideas into high-performing and unique websites. So it's so exciting when those websites launch, but it's not a set it and forget it type of solution. It's something that you have to routinely go back and update and check. And we're going to go through about 15 items today. And our goal is that you really have some clear takeaways and action items that you can go right back to your office and put into effect right away. So if anyone has any questions throughout this program, you can use the chat roll at the bottom and we'll see those questions pop up and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. If we don't get to your question, we'll follow up and answer it after the program.
So please put those questions in the chat roll like Ray said, and these are our learning objectives today right here up on your screen. We're going to go through 15 steps for spring cleaning your website. And these are some actionable steps that you can, or actionable items that you can come away with. So refreshing some key content on your website, reviewing your SEO plan and your strategy, checking your analytics and performance and maybe some benchmarking for those analytics, cross-pollinating your digital platforms and, helping to cross-link throughout your website, and your policy, process, and performance.
Nice. So first on our list is attorney bios. So in case you don't know, the bios on your website are the most frequently visited pages, across all the data we've looked at. Those are the pages that people are viewing the most. Your prospects, your clients are going there not just to learn about the experience of your attorneys, but also to find phone numbers and email and other information and ways to contact them. So of course, that's where they go. It's critical to make sure that any new content is routinely added to those bios. So that includes basic information like new matters, settlements, deals, things like that. But also, are there any new awards or publications? Your website may be set up for some of those things to automatically feed, but other things like memberships and speaking engagements may not automatically appear. So it's important we're talking about spring cleaning. Spring cleaning comes once a year, but some of these things you could even be updating on a more routine basis. Another thing to think about with the bios is there any more timely 2021 content that belongs in those bios? Is there work done surrounding a new practice, maybe COVID relief, or even a new practice like cannabis law is a hot topic right now. So if there are new things like that, update that type of thing. And another way to think about the content on the bios is the introduction. I think many times we write that when the website launches and then it kind of stays put for a long time. But you can think of that kind of as your introduction, when you meet a new person. You're saying, who you are and what you do and what problems you solve in that very first section. So if there's new things that your lawyers are doing, they can update that and swap it out. If you know that you're pitching work in a particular area, you can highlight that in that front section of your website of a bio. And then when that matter is, won or your lawyer's already working on that, you can turn it back to the more general introduction.
Now, Ray, I have a question. Is there a rule for how long or short a bio should be?
So that is a great question, because another thing that I should mention is part of the review process should be taking out really old content. And is the thing that your lawyer wrote from a long, long time ago really important to be in the bio still? So that's a decision that you'll have to make. Maybe there's other old content that isn't relevant anymore. But I would say overall, there's no total number, there's no word count that you're going for. What you need to do is answer the questions that someone is asking when coming to that bio. What problems does that lawyer solve? Where, how can they help that person? And if you find that there's really long content and there's no removing it, think about other ways to redesign that page so that very long content can be collapsed, or you see the beginning of the content and you have a more button to see more. So sometimes that's the solution maybe sometimes there's a design solution, not just a content solution to reviewing those bios.
Alrighty, so next up, after your bios are all spruced up and spick and span, sparkling clean, you want to move on to your practice area pages. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach for practice area pages. A lot of firms will do a storytelling approach, which is really popular now, while some will have a little bit more information. It's good to add some new representative matters to kind of spruce up your practice area pages. Maybe you're in the same practice area, but you might be doing matters in a different industry. So it's good to include those. Also, take out any matters that may have been with, industries that you're no longer representing. So you want all of your matters on that practice area page to be representative of what you can offer now. Don't use too many technical terms. Check that the law hasn't evolved or changed when you are writing this. You want to make sure that your employment law litigation page is relevant of what the employment laws are today. You don't want some old matters and old laws that may have existed 5 years ago that are no longer relevant on your practice area page. You also want to cross-reference to other pages on your website, and a practice area page is a great place to do this. One goal for your websites is to have your bounce rate be really low, and that means have users stay on your website and continue to click around, not just click on one page and bounce off. So maybe that practice area has a blog associated with it, and you could link to that blog on that practice area page, or have a subscription form for that blog right on the practice area page. You want to make sure you're linking back to your attorneys who are in that practice area, and also linking to any relevant articles that are there.
So I heard you say, be careful about technical terms. So what should you do if your partners say, this is it, we're talking about a technical legal subject, we're going to use these technical terms?
I always say don't use too many technical terms, because sometimes your potential client or your prospect may not be an attorney and they may not know what you're talking about. So as a rule, I usually say explain things as if you were explaining your practice to your 15-year-old cousin. Don't use, super lay terms, but use enough lay terms and language that anybody can understand it, particularly if you're in those private client law practice areas such as family law or estate planning, probate litigation. Most of your clients are going to be more consumer-based and less attorneys or fewer attorneys. If you're catering more toward in-house counsel or, the corporate world, then maybe they can understand some technical terms. And even though there's no rule, I say, use your terms on the practice area pages where it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense across all of them.
That makes sense.
Alrighty, so next up, you have your practice area pages done. You want to check your dates on all of your websites. You're cross-linking from the practice area pages to these relevant articles and some other pages on your website. Make sure all the dates are correct. My favorite thing is to make sure the verbiage is past tense. You don't want an event from 2019 saying, Kristen Brophy is presenting at X, Y, and Z event on March 20th, 2019. You want it to be did present, and make sure that all of that information on that page is still relevant.
So when I was at my last law firm, we had some rules about cutting out content that was a certain number of years old. Only events that were, for example, 5 years old on the site. But we had some folks really insist that their content, old blog posts and white papers and things, stay on the site forever. How would you respond to that type of message?
So something that I feel very strongly about, and a lot of us millennial marketers do, is that you should cater your content to your future decision makers. There are 5 generations in the workplace right now, going from Gen Z all the way up to the silent generation or pre-war generation. And it's very important to cater your communications to everybody. So if a partner says like, oh, well, I wrote this article in 1991 and it was extremely relevant then and very important then, and I'm the decision maker for my firm, I'm a millennial. I was born in 1989. So I would not have been old enough to be aware of what was going on in 1991 when that article was authored and when that was happening. So that article is not relevant to me. It might be relevant to the attorney who authored it, and it may have been relevant to some other clients of his, but it's not going to be relevant to me as a decision maker. So that's why I say cater that content and be careful who your audience is.
Do you think there's any exceptions to that, or is it ever possible to revisit or reuse some of that old content through a 2021 lens?
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes there are things that are evergreen or content that can be reused and repurposed all the time. Much like with the practice area pages, there is no rule or one-size-fits-all approach to every law firm. Just because you authored an article 10 years ago and it's not necessarily relevant anymore, you could take snippets out of that article and then repurpose it in other ways on your website and update it to be relevant in 2021.
That makes sense. So the next spring cleaning item is reviewing your SEO. So it's important to keep in mind that you should be able to control the on-site SEO that's on the SEO that's on your website. So first, that starts with making sure that you have either the Yoast plugin or something that allows you to edit or write the content in the snippets. So the snippets is the title and the description that you see on a search engine results page. And that's content that's very important for SEO, but it's also important just to the person who's coming to the site and sees the search results and is making a decision which of these links they decide to click on and explore further. So again, you should be able to edit those and look at each of those. I've seen on websites, the homepage, the snippet title says home. And that is not very helpful for me to decide that is, as a prospect, as a client to decide that's a page that I want to go to, home. I don't even know home of what. So it won't encourage anyone to click on that link. a second important piece of SEO spring cleaning that you can do is make sure that some of your high level H tags are used properly. So this is what I mean. The most important words on the page, which is probably the title of your page, should be set up as an H tag. And so you can see right in on our slide here where you have the little caret H1, that's the type of tag that the title should be. So if you are looking at a page of your website, you can select the title of your of that page and right click and click inspect, and you should be able to see that the title is set up as an H1 tag. Recently, we did an audit of a client's website that someone else designed. It was a beautiful website. It was designed very well in most ways, except there was, kind of a mistake that the developer made, and that was making the title tag, or making the most important information on the page, the title of the page, an H5 tag. And then that does not communicate with the search engine crawlers that this is the most important piece of information. This is the title of my page. So that's something that can, if you learn that that's a problem on the site, that's something that can be corrected by a developer. But, the first thing you need to do is get the assurance that those tags are used properly.
So how can you find those tags again?
So you select the title and right click, inspect element, and then you'll see this code at the bottom of your page, and you'll be able to see that that it says that it's set up as H1. And then another thing that you can do if you're when you're working on your SEO tags for your snippet, is do some research about what keywords do you want your website to be found for. And there's a tool called trends.google.com, which is on the slide here. And that's a place where you can help figure out what people are searching for and help tailor your content and the words and that metadata and those descriptions to match that content. So for example, what is searched for more frequently? Is it automobile attorneys or car accident lawyers? Which of those two terms will help my site rank better? So that's another resource you can use to go through, and you really need to look at that on a page by page basis of your site. Now, another thing you can do with Yoast and other tools is set up some automation so that the pages have certain details in place. For example, you can make sure that every title has the page title and then the firm name in it. That's something that we would use on, for example, a news page. If you have hundreds and hundreds of news pages, you may be independently SEOing every single page, or you may say we have so many, we're not trying to drive traffic to this one event page or this one news page. So let's make sure that everything is automatically set up with this automated tag that we've set up in Yoast. So the next item on our list is benchmarking search results. So, I mean, the bottom line here is you have to start somewhere. You have to know where you're beginning, and in order to know if you've gone anywhere. And I mentioned on the last slide, think about what those keywords are for which you want to be found. And, again, if you want some help trying to figure out what those are, there's tools like this trends.google.com. But benchmarking is so important. But keep in mind that if you're just going to a search page and typing in a keyword to see where you end up in results, keep in mind that your location and your previous search behavior will influence what shows up in those results. So in order to get a true picture of what is happening and where your page shows up in results, you need to use a private browser. So an example of that is Chrome Incognito, and that takes away all of your search behavior and just shows you like the true location of your page in those search results. So once you put those search results in, I would say make sure that there's some way that you can document where on the page your firm is showing up for different keywords, and also keep in mind, so then go back to practice those SEO practices we talked about. And if you still don't like the progress that you're making, think about investing in a pay-per-click campaign or some SEO support from an SEO company, because the truth is your competitors probably are spending on SEO. So even though it might seem like a big campaign, your competition might be doing that.
So what do I do if an SEO strategy or SEO help and a pay-per-click campaign is not in my budget right now?
So that's a good question. Like I said, those SEO campaigns, do have a cost associated with them. So another thing you can do to help move your ranking on the search engine result page is check out the people also ask section of search results. So when you're doing searches, depending upon the type of search, you may see a little block about halfway down the page with these questions. So for example, I Googled bicycle accident lawyer just to see, what would pop up. And I saw some paid ads. I saw some other, results ranking there. And then there's this section that says, questions that people also ask. So the examples there I saw were, when should you contact a lawyer after an accident? What happens if you accidentally hit a cyclist? Whose fault is it if a car hits a bicycle? I wonder. And how do accident attorneys work? So you could go there, see these questions, and then create content on your website that matches these questions and gives the answer. So if people are asking these questions, they're being answered on the site, in the search results. So you can write a blog post, maybe there's some kind of news article, depending upon the way that your website is set up, some FAQs, and ask that question. And that question can even be the title of your FAQ or your blog post, and then answer the question. And then, so in Google, when I saw these questions, when I click on them, I see a quick preview of the answer, and then I can click through to a law firm website or another type of website that answers the question. So it's kind of like a secret way to get content that matches the things that people are already searching for, and help your site go up the rankings, even if it's not the typical, going to your homepage or something else. It still is helping you with SEO and helping drive traffic to your site.
Now, while you're driving traffic to your site, you want to set up some benchmarking for your analytics. Google Analytics is your friend, and it is a way to check for patterns, trends, and maybe even some surprises when you're looking in at your site's performance. One way to kind of learn how to use Google Analytics is they do offer a Google Analytics Academy right through Google. If you have an analytics account, you also have access to this free training program to become GA certified. What Google doesn't show you, though, is how to measure what is best for your firm. So it's important for you to work with your firm and identify which key metrics are important to you. I always say, whose bio is performing best, or whose practice area is performing best, and turn it into a little bit of a game that I can then report back to attorneys internally at a firm. And an attorney who is particularly active on LinkedIn, or active sharing content, active writing thought leadership over maybe the first quarter, his bio would have been viewed more than others. And that's fun to kind of share with other attorneys and say, well, this attorney's doing a great job and is directing a lot of traffic to our website. So maybe somebody else can win. I mean, a little competition doesn't hurt anybody, right? It's also important to identify what your key performance indicators are, or your KPIs. What are your traffic sources? Is it organic search? Is it paid search? Is it social media, email referrals? all of the different sources bringing traffic to the website, and that can help you inform your digital marketing strategy from there. You can also look, as I said, at your highest performing pages and your lowest performing pages and really take advantage of the messaging on the pages that people see most.
So Kristen, is there a charge for like a basic Google Analytics or a more advanced one? And also, how do you get Google Analytics to pull the data from your site into a dashboard that you can look at and review?
Absolutely. Google Analytics is a free tag that you can put and embed on the back end of your website. So you embed that somewhere in your CMS. And if you don't know how to do it, you can have your developer do it for you. It's very easy to do. And that tag is associated with your domain and will start tracking all of your information coming to your website. It does take some time to build up that information and get all of that data in there, but once it builds up, it gives you a lot of valuable information. You can also set up a whole bunch of different views for what you want to compare in all of the reports you want to see in Google Analytics. So one thing I liked to do when I was working in-house at a firm was set up quarterly dashboards and compare how my website was performing quarter over quarter. And then that shows, what our marketing strategies were really helping with and what our thought leadership was helping with and where the traffic was being directed on the website. So definitely free to use, free to learn with that Google Analytics Academy. You can, ask somebody for help, maybe a web developer or a Google Analytics expert, and they can help you build all of those views and build all of that data and make those reports. But it's easy enough to learn on your own and, start looking for just a couple things, start small and then snowball from there and really perform on your analytics strategy. One thing I love to do, like I said, is turn it into a competition and say, this attorney got the most page views on his profile last month. What can the rest of you do to make your views better? And sometimes give a Starbucks gift card or something. Give a little bit of a prize in that gamification.
We did that at my last firm with content that people posted, and it was a big competition. It was fun.
Absolutely. Everybody gets competitive. Whether they say they're competitive or not, it always happens.
Mm-hmm. So the next item for spring cleaning is very straightforward. Broken links. So these broken links on your site are just really frustrating to a visitor who's come to your site. They've navigated around, they haven't bounced off, and they're, reading content, and you've linked to something that seems relevant because you've linked to it, and they click and it goes off your site and it's broken. Or worse, it goes somewhere else on your site and it's a broken link. And that just leads to poor performance. People then, may think that you're not updating your website and choose to leave your site. And also, what kind of impression does that leave a person who's on your site? If you can't keep these links up to date, how well can you lawyer my case, for example? So that's important. But another thing that broken links can interfere with is your SEO, because when there are broken links on your site, that can signal to search engines that your website's not being updated and doesn't have valuable content, and that can hurt your rankings. So it's important to address those broken links. And it's likely that at the time that you launched your last website, you went through every link of the site, made sure everything went to the appropriate place. You added redirects so that nothing, went to a broken page or a 404 error or anything like that. But now, fast forward, your site is up for whether it's a month or a year or a few years, those links are bound to appear. Perhaps it's from removing a bio of a person who left, or maybe your site is linking off your website to a news article or some other content somewhere else, and that website maybe made changes and didn't set up their through-one redirects. So it's important to come back to this and review. And I think that the hot places to look are in the news content, and then also look at those bio redirects.
So do I need to look at my website page by page, or are there any tools that can help me with this?
So the old-fashioned way, page by page. That is not fun. There are resources to help with this. There are some paid tools like Site Improve is a resource out there. At my last firm, they gave us a free copy of broken links, and I went in and changed those. That was helpful. But that's a paid tool. There are also some free tools, some that are plugins. There's one called Broken Link Checker. That's a pretty unique name to check for broken links. And you can install that on a WordPress site, and it will give you a report of your broken links, and you can just update those and keep that keep those broken links off your site.
Good to know. Switching from broken links, I'm going to sound like a broken record because I always talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most valuable social media platform for professionals, businesses, law firms, lawyers, everything. I could speak about LinkedIn for hours, but I'll spare you all that and just make it relevant to your website. So you definitely want to align your attorney's bios with your LinkedIn. You know, it's like that little dust bunny in the corner that you usually don't get to. You're so focused on your website that you don't think about LinkedIn. And LinkedIn profiles are 2 times more likely to be viewed than your website bio when someone is trying to learn about you. So in-house counsel, when they are, trying to find somebody to be their outsourced law firm or their external legal services outside counsel, they're going to look at your LinkedIn, particularly the younger generations who grew up with social media and who are very adept at looking to LinkedIn before they look anywhere else. Everybody looks for jobs on LinkedIn. They connect with people on LinkedIn. Of course, they're going to look at their attorneys' profiles. So that's something you want to make sure aligns with your bios. You can also link back to LinkedIn. Many people will put a little LinkedIn icon right on the attorney bio page and link directly to that attorney's LinkedIn profile. So LinkedIn is definitely one of those things that can strengthen your connections, help you build a referral base. You can use it as a business development tool, a personal branding tool, a marketing tool. Options are limitless with LinkedIn. And I can't stress enough how valuable it is to have a LinkedIn page and link that back to your website. Not only should you link it to your attorney bios, but you should link your firm's website to the firm's LinkedIn page. And that way you can see all of the content that the firm is being posted, that the firm is posting about, and cross-pollinate that digital marketing strategy there.
That's, it's something that we are finding is more and more routine on a website bio to have, phone number, email, LinkedIn link right there. And now we've run into some clients here and there where someone just doesn't want LinkedIn. So they're missing that little link on their bio. Do you think it's important for every single person, even those who are just kicking and screaming, saying no? Do they still need it? Do you think it's worth really pressing them on that?
Yes. I mean, pick and choose your battles, obviously. I was a, solo marketer at a firm, and maybe you all viewing are solo marketers as well, or some of you are, and you don't know, or you don't have the time to know which battles to choose. If there is a partner emeritus who still dictates everything and is so vehemently against LinkedIn, maybe don't pick that battle. Maybe go for that junior partner who refuses to use LinkedIn, but they definitely have the wherewithal and all of the knowledge available to them to be able to use it. And if all else fails, log in for them. Sometimes it helps to bring in a second set of eyes or a third party to your LinkedIn profile. So either you as the marketing person help, get their profile along and then just build it up, make it look nice, and then download the app on their cell phone and say, just spend 2 minutes every day interacting with the homepage. It's all you have to do. Just interact with your feed so you're somewhat on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, people just aren't going to listen to you when you're in-house at a law firm. So it helps to bring someone else in with that consultant tag next to their name, because people might be more likely to listen to the consultant because they know what they're talking about.
Even though the in-house marketer has said it 5 times, sometimes the 6th time, when they hear it the 6th time from the consultant, it sounds a little different. And another thing that was successful at my previous firm, we had a few partners who were rainmakers and very busy. They saw the value in LinkedIn, and they had their administrative assistant manage the majority of their LinkedIn interactions for them. And they were, in some of those cases, they already worked so closely with their legal administrative assistant. That was barely a change from every other thing that they did. So that can be another way to go with that.
Exactly. That's an excellent example. At my previous firm, one of the legal assistants, she actually managed one of her partner's LinkedIn pages because he couldn't be bothered, but he realized the value of it. And they had worked together for 20 years. So it really could have been him writing all of those posts that she was actually writing for him.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Share, share, share alike. You want to, like I said, the value of LinkedIn, make sure the rest of your content is easy to share to LinkedIn for any visitors coming to your website. There are some plugins that can, work with your different platforms to have those little simple share buttons, or somebody could do, your developer could do some extra development to put in those simple social share buttons. With a click of a button, you can go to Facebook and share that page to Facebook. You can share that page to LinkedIn. You can send a tweet about it. So it's important to make it easy to share. That way your content is getting pushed out there to more people, and then more people will come back to your website and your website performance will go up. Sharing cross-pollinates, that's the kind of cross-pollination you don't want to dust off your desk.
So have you ever shared a link from a website, either in social media, text, Skype, or anything like that, where you've seen that little picture get really stretched out? I mean, I've seen that recently, and it's something that, we see on the sites that we inherit. But did you know that that's something that anyone can update on their site? That's actually, that little photo has a name. It's called Open Graph Image, and your developer, you can decide what picture gets shared, and your developer can upload that picture so that anytime any link is shared, that you are in control of that little image that you see.
That's a really good point that you bring up, because the previous website that Concavanaugh had, we were not able to go in and easily change that open graph image. So anytime any link from the Concavanaugh website was shared, the very first attorney's headshot in alphabetical order would be the image associated with that content, whether or not it related to him. So it was funny. You'd be putting up an article from the family law department or the estate planning department, and this poor senior corporate associate was getting tagged with all of this. So it's definitely important to check that open graph image and the content formats when you're sharing things to social media are correct, because you don't want someone to blindly share a page from your website and then end up with the wrong image. When all else fails, use your logo. That is my recommendation. That way you can just always have your logo associated with anything from your website, and it's not going to offend any one attorney or another, or have the wrong imagery tagged with the wrong type of content. You also want to make sure your page titles are correct, because that will also pull over into those share links.
Absolutely. And just to circle back to that, those page titles are something that you should be able to edit on your website. And if you don't see a place to edit that, talk to your developer. That should be something that you can change on your own if it's not what you want.
All righty, going down to mobile. So there is a company, Proficient Incorporated, that did a survey of all traffic to all websites in the United States in 2020, and 61% of all website visits through Google Analytics were visits from mobile devices. That's everybody. I mean, everybody has a smartphone. They're accessing a website in one way or another, or at one point or another. And I even know some people, I've grown up in the more technological generation. I know some people that don't even own a home computer. Their only computer is the one that they use at work or for work at the office, or a laptop that they have from work. And then they use their phone for everything else personal. So they're accessing websites and using their phone for everything. They also will sometimes use their phone just, when you're in bed at the end of the night, or you are bumming on the couch, relaxing after a long day, or when you're out and about in town, you have that little handheld device on you and you can access any website at any time. So it's important that your website is not only looking great on a desktop, you also want it to be responsible. I mean, it is responsible to be responsive. You do want it to be responsive on mobile as well, because you want everything to work properly and not just look nice, but actually function as you're trying to use it.
Mm-hmm. And to underscore that point, it's not just a tiny version of your website on your phone. A responsive design means that you're actually taking all the pieces of content and rearranging them to function on a smaller device. So maybe instead of having 2 columns, you have 1 column in a bio or in a certain page. And another thing that that we focus on with a mobile design is what are things that people do more on their phone or on a mobile device than on a desktop view of a website. And I think one easy example of that is call. So if there's any places where there's a phone number, it should not just be stuck in an image. It should be a link so that when you click on that phone number, it opens up, call this number, and you can do it immediately. Any types of forms or anything like that need to work perfectly on your phone or your tablet. I mean, especially if you've launched the site and at the time that you launched it, you thought, hey, that looks fine on mobile. Look at it again. Look through every page, every type of page. Make sure that content isn't flying off the page. Make sure that you can see everything. It should function, again, not the exact same way as it does on your desktop, but it should function the way you expect and work, and you should be able to access the same things. Now, with let me just say, not everything, because for one example is sometimes an animation that appears on a desktop may not work the same way on a phone because it might be too small to be able to see the animation in a proper way. And also video does not necessarily automatically play. Most web browsers on the phone stop it from playing. So one tactic that many designers and developers use is just to have a screenshot of that video, because you're still getting the overall look from a screenshot of the video. It's not just like a tiny version of the desktop view. So with that in mind, the next item on our list is check behind the curtain. And in this case, the curtain is your CMS, your content management system. So this spring cleaning is not just looking at the website for things that can be improved, but looking on the back end. And this could be one of those things that's a pain point that you didn't even know that you could address. In the back end of your website, your developer can change the name of the different fields so that they are easier to use and more intuitive. So, if you have a bio that has an intro section, and a narrative section, and admissions and education, those sections should be very clearly labeled. You can go as far to say, in the phone number, a little note, use periods instead of hyphens, or in the email field, everything before the @ should be lowercase, or, those types of things. Now, of course, these are minor things, but these are little items that make the content of your website consistent and smooth and clean. And you're sending a message that, we check out the details. These things are important to us. And, it's a lot easier to have a little note on the back end so that every time a new piece of content is added, it's added correctly, than adding it and then later noticing on the landing page, hey, everyone's phone number has dot has periods, but this one has dashes. Whoops, then they look kind of goofy. So, that's something that you have if your developer can make those changes. Another time that's important is, if you're training a new person, when I was at my last law firms, we had co-ops come through every 6 months. We had a new, college age young professional who came in, and, we really had them working on some pretty important things like on the website. And it made training so much easier if you could just look at a back of a bio or a practice area, and it would say, this is where the matters go, and have a little note about how you format matters, or, you get the idea. So that's, really important. Another thing to keep in mind with this, behind the curtain item is look at your asset library, whether it's called the media library or something else, where you have different images and particularly documents like PDFs. Maybe that's checklists or tips or white papers that people can download from your site. Just double check that those file names are file names that make sense. If I download that, is the file name a string of letters and numbers, or does it say, white, is it a description of what it is, so that once that person downloads it, they can easily find it, save it, keep track of it, versus that thing with all those letters that I, periodically delete from my downloads because I can't even figure out what it is without opening it. And, I think we're all moving fast. So just something to keep in mind when you're going through and spring cleaning your website. There's lots of these little things that you should be doing, on a regular basis to make sure that your website is as polished as it possibly can be.
So do you recommend setting up a style guide so that when you're creating these new pages, everything has that same consistency?
Yes, absolutely. So, and that's something that applies to the website and really can and should be applied to your, RFP responses and other, blog posts, all that type of thing. And I know that probably seems pretty daunting. Like, where do you even start with a style guide? But you just begin, okay, a website bios, and start making notes on, is the bio written in the first person or the third person? Do we spell out Bachelor of Arts for undergrad degree, or do we put BA, or, what is our format? Do we use the Oxford comma? All those types of things, put down on paper. It will take time to collect all of the things that that are in your style guide. But once that is collected, you share a digital version of it to the folks who need to see it, and then update as you need to. If a new thing comes up that you hadn't thought of, add that and just make that a growing, living document and reference it. It's great for new folks who join the marketing department, but even new attorneys. If you've asked someone to write a blog post, they may not know which style the firm uses, and they probably want to know. It saves them a trip to, around to your office to ask you, well, do I need to use a serial comma or what? Sorry, grammar is my is my jam. So that's a great question. I think that's a really important thing to add to your to-do list, the style guide.
Alrighty.
All right. So the next we have plugins. So in plain terms, a plugin is just a little piece of software that adds functionality or some new feature to your site that hasn't been otherwise just coded into your website. And when your developer is launching your website or developing your website, it might feel like a quick, easy solution to add to the site. And that's fine. We're not against plugins, but it's something you have to be really mindful of, because you're getting this code, this little piece of software from a third party and putting it on your site. Now, you have to keep in mind that, that software developer is releasing new updates to that plugin to to fix problems with it or to improve it in some way. So every time there's a plugin update, that has to be updated on your website. Also, if you ever do a full core update of your website, you have to make sure that that update doesn't break the plugin. The plugin might work on your CMS version 5, but when you update to version 6, that plugin isn't designed to integrate with version 6. So then you might need to find a new plugin to solve that problem, redevelop that part of the functionality. Those things are typically not things that you can do on your own without a developer, but you should be able to look into the back end and see if something, there should be a little like signal that something needs to be updated. It's just, something to keep in mind for, for the next website. We say, overall, just be careful.
So is the best approach to avoid all plugins?
So no, I don't want to make it sound like plugins are bad. There are plenty of very, highly tested, highly rated plugins. We kind of have like a very short list of plugins that we do install on every site that are very useful and trusted. I mentioned Yoast earlier. There are broken link checker plugins out there that that are very useful, but it's just something that you need to be, again, mindful of. There are some that are tried and true and tested, but even recently I was doing research on some of those link checker plugins, and I was reading about one that was really cool, and I went to look at it and see like the reviews of that plugin, and it had been discontinued. So if you had downloaded that plugin to your site and you had some problem, there's no more support on it. You would need to uninstall it and then use some other solution if you're experiencing a problem, or if you update your site and it's just not compatible anymore. So no, I'd say they're not bad. They're fine. It's just you just have to just pick and choose the ones that you want. That's our recommendation. I know some developers use plugins for lots of things, and just in our experience, it can be tricky.
Yes, I've definitely used a plugin on a former firm's website that just caused more issues than it was worth, and it cost like $300 a year, and it wasn't even working properly.
Oh my gosh. Most plugins are free, so that's surprising that you had a bad plugin that costs that much money. Wow.
I know. Well, after you're done plugging in all the plugins, you want to mind the footer. So the footer is that little static area at the bottom of your website that either in some templates it will appear on every single page, but that's not always the case. But always, use it or think of it as a rule of thumb that it's always going to be there. You want to make sure that in your footer, all of the links are working properly. Is the link to your privacy policy updated? Is your legal disclaimer updated? Are your icons up to date? And are those linking to the proper social media icons? So at the bottom of most websites, you'll see social media icons going to, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. And those are all great and well, but sometimes law firms have some icons that are out of date. So Twitter, for example, they've updated their icon. They're not using that T anymore. That is a bird, because a lot of people were confusing Twitter with Tumblr. So Tumblr uses the T, Twitter is the bird. You want to make sure you're using the correct icon for the correct social media platform. And if you have something like Google Plus up on your website in the footer, that social media platform was sunset quite a while ago. So that is definitely not an active link anymore. You also want to make sure that your copyright tag is up to date. Some websites have an automatic, date tag on the back end where it will just automatically refresh the copyright year each year as it turns over. But sometimes you do have to manually update it and check it. So just make sure if it is 2021 that your copyright or the copyright in your footer is not saying 2019 or, even worse, 2012 or something terrible like that. I've seen it. You may laugh, but I have seen it. A couple other things you want to make sure are up to date in your footer are maybe your bar associations call for attorney advertising in your local jurisdictions to be placed on your website, or having a sitemap on your footer, because it's a way for search engine crawlers to search all of the pages on your website, and it's great for your SEO.
So I just wanted to clarify, did you say that all law firms need to have the words attorney advertising in their footer?
Not all law firms need to have attorney advertising in their footer. Some do put them in their footer just as a best practice, because there are some local state bar associations or jurisdictions that will say you need to have attorney advertising on every single one of your marketing materials. So if you're not sure and you think it should be there, there's no harm in including it. But if it doesn't need to be there, then it's not required. Not all firms need it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So next is about the domain name. So that's, your www, so on. So you can think about your domain name. You're really renting the rights to use it for a period of time. You don't get to buy it and keep it forever. So that means that at a certain point in time, it's going to expire and you need to renew it. So it's pretty simple, but just make a note of when it will expire so that you remember to renew it. And you can renew for long periods of time, like 10 years. There is some risk associated with that. For example, if your firm name changes and you want to change your domain, but you probably will want to own let's say your firm name changes from ABC Law to just AB Law. You probably still want to hang on to ABC Law to make sure that it redirects to AB Law. But all I'm saying is you can basically rent the rights to use that domain name for a certain period of time. Make a note that when it expires, so that you can not run into a page not found. It's a pretty big problem when your website comes down because you forgot to renew your domain. And there are some tools out there, like a free domain expiry checker. So it had a long URL. So we added a little QR code. So if you want to take a snapshot of that, it will take you to the link so you can check when your website domain expires.
That's an excellent tool for that little, after that little QR code. Definitely look into that. And if you don't know your expiry date, check it out. I started at my firm at Concavenaugh, and I had no idea what any of the domain expiry dates were. So that's a very valuable tool.
That's a good point. When people change over, that's typically not a piece of information that's shared. So if you're putting this information in your calendar as a reminder, also add someone from finance and maybe, the operations person or office manager. Make sure you have a few people from different departments who are on that calendar notice that says that it expires, so that you're not out of luck when the marketing director leaves and is the only person who held that information. Good call.
All right. And tip number 15, policy is the best policy. So in a previous step, when I was telling you to mind your footers and not step in your mud there, you want to make sure that your privacy policy, which is typically linked in your footer, is up to date. So we have the GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation, and CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act, which are a way that require informed consent before collecting data or regarding your data. It requires that there is something on your website saying how your data is being collected and used and managed after it is collected. And then, you don't want to be caught red-handed. So I always say adhere to these best practices in GDPR or CCPA, because, the European Union adopted GDPR, then California followed suit. Virginia is now on the verge of passing its own consumer data privacy legislation. It's only a matter of time before the rest of the United States follows suit. We have all of these internet laws that haven't been updated in years, even though the internet and the way we collect data and interact with the internet has vastly changed. So it's important to kind of keep up to date with the most strict one that is out there, and just use that as kind of your benchmark for how you are updating your privacy policy. Another thing that some attorneys or some law firms will include in their privacy policy is a note saying that any data you submit or any information you submit on this website does not institute an attorney-client relationship. Therefore, you should not submit any confidential relationship about a matter. Sometimes that's on the contact form, but a lot of firms do include that in their privacy policy.
Mm-hmm. I've even seen that on the bio. When you click on the email, you get a pop-up saying this, anything you email does not create, you shouldn't send anything confidential. And this sending an email does not create a relationship.
Yeah. It's very important.
Yeah. So we have one more. We have about a minute left. So we have a bonus. And this is a really easy to do that you should check about on your site. And it's the favicon, which is the teeny tiny little square visual to represent kind of a little bit of branding on your site. It could be the icon from your logo. It could be a stylized version of a letter in your name. So for example, LinkedIn, it doesn't say LinkedIn in that little square. It just says in. And, Twitter just has the icon. It just has the little bird. So check out what you have, what shows up as your favicon. If you don't have one, you might just see the first letter of your firm's name. And that's something that you can very easily create a little teeny tiny file, and it can be uploaded to your site. And it seems like it's just what's the big deal? It's just a teeny tiny little icon, but it's actually something that is used for in browsing. It can be used in favorites and bookmarks and search history and other places. So it's a little visual signal to the person who's on your website, what you're looking at. I find it very helpful when I have a lot of tabs open, which I always do, to be able to see, what something is as I scroll across all my tabs. So it's a little thing, but it's something that you can do to check off your list to make your website just a little bit cleaner. So I think there were a couple questions, but we're going to follow up with people directly, just because for the sake of time. And Kristen, thank you so much. This was really fun to talk about ways to clean up your website for this little spring cleaning. Makes me want to go get my duster.
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to get my duster out just yet, but I'll at least take some Febreze to my website if I have to.
Good call.
Baby steps, right?
Good call. All right. Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you, everybody.